Welcome back to episode 3 of Looks Like Blood on the Balcony. Yeah, we're at episode 3. Don't know how we got here so fast, to be honest, but that's what happens when you're over the grand old age of 25. The time just flies by. But yeah, so we've looked at some paranormal stuff. We've looked at true crime. Tonight we're going to be going into our otherworldly story. Yeah, I don't want to say it's a story because, well, it is a story, but it's apparently a experience that happened to somebody. It was one of the most famous, again, I'm good at these most famous ones, UFO abduction stories in the world, really. One of the most famous alien abduction cases in the whole world. It's got evidence of polygraph tests, there's actual real life witnesses, emotional breakdowns, and one terrified man who reappeared after 5 days with a story that changed UFO investigations forever. Now, there was a movie made about it, and it was called Fire in the Sky. There has been endless documentaries made about this alien abduction, stories, interviews, and the guy in question was called Travis Walton. He was normal guy, normal family. He was a logger from Snowflake in Arizona. And yeah, one fateful night, his whole life changed. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. We do sort of do different things every week. So, you know, from paranormal to alien abductions to true crime, anything you want to talk about, anything that you've got stories about, email them in to bloodonthebalcony@gmail.com. I've also got an Instagram as well, if you wanted to drop me a message on Instagram, anything at all that's a little bit weird. So anything paranormal, any true crime stuff that you'd like me to dig into. If you've been abducted by aliens, or you know somebody that's been abducted by aliens, if you've seen UFOs, anything like that, get it in and we'll talk about it. But today is going to be all about Travis and his story. So yeah, buckle up and let's dive in. So it's November the 5th, 1975. A logging crew of 7 men were working in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Snowflake, Arizona. Normal, tough, hard-working guys. Again, not fantasists, not dreamers, just working to earn their money, as they did every day. The crew consisted of Mike Rogers, which is the foreman. He was responsible, he was respected, family guy. Travis Walton, he was 22 years old. He was fit and energetic. There was Alan Dallas. He was tough and argumentative. Then there was also Ken Peterson, John Goulet, Steve Pierce, and Dwayne Smith. Normal men, normal job, normal day. They had been in the forest logging for the majority of the day. Sun up till sundown is usually how they work. They finished work late this particular evening. The sun had just started to go down. It was leaving a dark blue glow across the forest. Nothing blue was growing. It was a dark blue glow across the forest. They piled into Mike's truck and they started to drive home along a long dirt road, as they do every single night they've been logging. It's quiet, there's no traffic, just the hum of the engine and the sound of the tyres crunching the gravel as they all go home, all tired after a busy day logging. But as they drive deeper into the forest, they see something ahead. It's a light. Doesn't look like headlights. Doesn't look like a fire. Something that looks a little bit weird. Something that they can't quite figure out what it is. So it's a glowing golden light that's shining through the trees. So as the truck gets closer, the men stop talking. They lean forward and stare through the windscreen. And then they see it. This is how the men described what they saw. Now, as I've said, these are normal guys. Can't see a reason why they would make a story like this up. Why you would put yourself under so much scrutiny in the 70s is it's wild why they would make this up. But they said that they saw a disc-shaped craft hovering just above the forest floor. It was silent, it was smooth, it was metallic, and it was about 20 feet across. They've said it was rotating quite slowly and pulsating with light. So it wasn't a distant sort of speck in the sky where they're like, oh, what's that? You know, we've all been there. You know, actually, I've got a story. When I was driving back from a gig one night, it was really late. It was really dark on the motorway, lots of traffic. And I was convinced that I'd seen a UFO. I was freaking out. The guys in the car with me were like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, it's the UFO, it's UFO, it's UFO. I was going mental because I was convinced it was a UFO. Anyways, we got closer. It was literally just the light turning on the motorway. I was gutted because I thought I'd actually seen a UFO. But anyway, it wasn't that kind of thing. It was very clear what they were seeing. It wasn't like, oh, look at that UFO, and then everyone's like, God, it's a light. Anyway, it's right there. It's in front of him. Mike stops the truck. The men freeze, all except Travis. Now, nobody can really explain why he did this, but whether it was out of curiosity, adrenaline, or something deeper, he decides he's going to open the door and go and have a look. So he steps out of the car. His friends shout at him to stop because he's walking towards a UFO, basically. Well, is it a UFO if it's not flying? A spaceship. Let's call it a spaceship. Craft's better. He's walking towards the craft. Step after step, he doesn't stop. His eyes are fixated on this disc, this craft. His breath misting in the cold air, so you can imagine, you know, it's really dark. There's lights from this UFO. He's walking towards it. He's not listening to his friends to stop. No fear, just going towards it. And then he stands directly beneath it. So it's hovering and he decides to stand underneath it. And that's when everything just changes. A blast of blue light hits him square in the chest. He's thrown backward violently and he sort of goes right back, crashes to the ground. The men are screaming, panicking. And then they would do exactly what every witness later admitted. They ran. So as soon as Travis had been hit by this light and thrown back, they ran away. They didn't try and help him. They just legged it, every man for himself at this point. So yeah, he's running away. Sorry, they are running away. So the truck explodes down the dirt road. No one speaks, no one breathes. Finally, a mile away, Mike decides to slam on the brakes. They're arguing, they're crying, they're shouting at each other that they shouldn't have left Travis. The adrenaline starts sort of wearing off a little bit and they're like, what the hell have we done? We've left Travis lying on the floor next to this spacecraft. So Mike decides to turn the truck around and go back and see if Travis is still there. And some of them are arguing not to go back, but he decides that they need to go back and they need to try and help Travis, because even though he was the one that sort of walked towards the craft, I think I'd be the same if the adrenaline had worn off and the panic had worn off. I'd be like, oh my God, you start thinking a bit more logically when you get away from the situation. So they decide they're going to go back together. They all decide that it's a good idea to go back and see if they can find Travis. So that's what they decide to do. I think some of them were a little bit more for the idea than others, but yeah, they decide that they're going to go and try and find Travis. So that's exactly what they do. They hop back in the truck. They head back to where they saw the craft and where they saw Travis last. When they get there, they're a little bit confused because they're like, is this the spot that we were actually at or not? Because everything is silent. There is nothing there. Travis is not there. The craft is not there. Everything is completely silent. So at this point, they are a little bit confused. They're expected to find Travis on the ground or his body or something knocking about, but there was absolutely nothing. So they search for a little while to try and find Travis, to try and see if they can find him. They're shouting, they're looking for him, and nothing. So they decide to head back to the village or the town. They hop back in the truck and off they go back to the town. Now they immediately go to the police station and tell them that Travis has gone missing. And they tell them the story. Now this is what makes it more believable to me, that they instantly went and told somebody, because that's exactly what I would do. I would come back, I would tell my partner, I would tell the kids, I would tell anyone that would listen, to be completely honest with you. I would tell who would listen to me. Obviously, it's a bit of a wacko story to start with. But yeah, the police aren't very accommodating, let's put it that way. They don't exactly welcome the workers with open arms. So yeah, they go straight to the police station to report what has happened. So now we're at the police station, and this is where the investigation begins into the stories of these guys that have just witnessed the craft in the forest and their friend disappearing. So Sheriff Marlin Giuseppe and Deputy Allison arrive quickly. They do not believe a word. So yeah, they're like, hell no. We're back in the 70s, don't forget, you know. I wasn't there then, just so you know. But they didn't have cameras like we had. You know, we didn't have the phone, so they couldn't take pictures. So they got no proof, basically. 7 grown men were in the police department saying, one of my friends was taken by a UFO. No chance. Not happening. You've gone crazy. Their theory was the crew had murdered Travis Walton and made up a UFO story to cover it up. Massively elaborate story about they've killed him because he's pissed them off, and they ran to the police station and said UFO took him. Now, I've never murdered anyone, so I don't know whether that would be my first story. A UFO had taken them. So search parties combed the forest all night looking for a body, looking for any blood, looking for signs of struggle, anything that would relate to Travis and his murder and, you know, pinning this on these guys. But Travis was just simply gone. He just wasn't there. There was nothing to say that he'd been there or anything other than what these guys were saying. So the next morning, the police decide to question the crew separately, and their stories match perfectly. The details are identical and the emotion that they are showing is real. So they then ask the men to take a polygraph test, so a lie detector test. I think how it works is if you're lying, your heart rate rises. If you're telling the truth, it stays normal. So all 6 of them, there's 7 of them, isn't there? So 6 of them agree, and one of them decides he doesn't want to do it. But not suspiciously. He had been on a warrant for an old charge, and he's scared of being arrested. So he's basically saying, I'm not going to do it because I'm already in trouble, and I don't want to incriminate myself, basically, that's going to lead to my arrest. So the 6 men take the test, and it becomes one of the most shocking results in polygraph history. 5 of them pass the polygraph test. 1 is inconclusive, but none of them fail. So the polygraph examiner later said these men were telling the truth. Something had happened to Travis Walton. So the police still weren't convinced, even though it's their test and they're the ones that have asked them to do the test. They still weren't convinced. They still believed that they'd murdered Travis. They'd all got a great cover-up story, and they still believe that Travis is dead. Then, this goes on for like 5 days. Travis is missing at 5 days for 5 days at this point. And on the 5th night, the phone rings. It's a petrol station phone box, late at night, and it's a man's voice. I need help. I'm Travis. Come and get me. Mike Rogers drives like a madman to the location of the phone box, and there, curled up on the ground behind the petrol station, is Travis Walton. He's freezing cold, skinny, weak, and terrified. When Mike touches him, Travis screams like an animal. He truly believes he's only been missing for a few hours, but it's been 5 days. He's taken to hospital, and his condition is quite strange for somebody that's been missing for this amount of time. He's severely dehydrated, which you would expect. He's got strange marks on his body, and he's got a fear of sudden light and a total inability to explain to anyone what happened. Not at first. He can't do it at first. He's completely bewildered. He's been picked up from the side of the road. Thinks he's been missing an hour, been gone 5 days. No idea. But then when Travis does finally start talking, his story is one of the most disturbing alien encounter testimonies ever recorded. So he starts to talk. He can remember what has happened to him, and it wasn't murder. He hasn't magically come back to life like the police think. He's not been murdered. He was taken aboard the craft. So Travis remembers waking up, not in a forest, not in the dirt. He wakes up lying on a flat table underneath a spotlight inside a white room. He thinks he's in the hospital to start with, so he thinks he's safe. Remember, he saw the light, got out the truck, walked towards it, got hit by this blue light, thrown backwards. Sounds like that's the last thing he remembers, but he thinks he's in a hospital. He thinks he's in this safe place, but then he turns his head. Standing beside him are figures. They're not human. They're not little green men. What he describes them as are short, pale, large heads, huge dark eyes, wearing simple uniforms, emotionless and silent. Travis panics. He jumps up off the table, grabs an instrument and swings it at them. So he's panicking at this time and he's like, what the hell, what is this? So he starts swinging these instruments at them and then they leave the room. He runs, so he's not tied down to the table. He's not been, bounded to the table or anything like that. He runs and he wanders through curved corridors. He finds strange controls. He said he enters a room with star-like patterns and then a figure approaches him. So this time it's a human-looking being. Tall, blue eyes, beautiful, but silent. The being never speaks, but only gestures towards him. Travis says the being leads him into another room where 3 more human-like beings are waiting. They put a mask on his face and then everything goes black. The next thing he remembers is waking up on the roadside beside the petrol station. So he's on this craft, so he believes. He's got little dudes with large heads, huge dark eyes, wearing uniforms, staring at him. He panics, jumps off the table, sees a human-like being, never speaks, just gestures, and then put a mask on him. And then the next thing he remembers is he's waking up at the side of the road. So, yeah. Travis is so traumatised at this point. He can't sleep with the lights off. He's crying, he's shaking, he wakes up screaming. Some have started to accuse him of lying. Some have started to call him a hoaxer. Others say the men made up the story. They made it up to sell the story to make money. But this is where things get even more complicated. So the men actually never made any money. For years they avoided interviews. Travis really struggled with the attention he was getting from the abduction. And the biggest point here is that the story has never changed. Since that night in that forest where they saw that craft, their stories have never changed, not once. Not one bit of evidence or one bit of story that's come out of their mouths has changed. They passed polygraph tests, but they didn't just pass one, they passed 2. Even the examiner admitted something happened out there, something they believe is true. So I think the police as well at one point accused them of drugs and being drunk and all that kind of thing. So I think they ran tests on them as well to see if they'd actually been taking drugs and they'd been hallucinating or anything like that. But even that wouldn't explain how a guy disappears for 5 days and then turns up randomly at a roadside. So the story does eventually become the movie Fire in the Sky. Although Hollywood changed parts of the abduction, it is based on Travis Walton. But the real case is so deeply documented that even today, UFO investigators call it one of the strongest abduction cases ever recorded. I think what they also did, they also said that they were in a logging contract and they wanted to get out of the logging contract. So they made this elaborate story up so they wouldn't have to go back into the forest. But when they've asked them about that as well, they did say it wasn't actually... it was up in like a couple of weeks, so there would have been no point. They would have lost like a little bit of money, but that would have been it. But yeah, I think it's really interesting that their stories have never changed, and they haven't changed all through the years. They've tried to get on with their lives. They've all got married, had kids, but their story is still exactly the same. So the theory is that it was a real alien abduction. He was taken up, they were doing tests on him, because he did have the weird marks on his body when he came back down. I really wish that he could remember more than that. He just remembers being in the room and then being taken by the human-looking person. Can you call it a person? Alien? Yeah, whatever it was. He remembers them and then blacking out completely. So there's not a lot that he remembers, which is quite... I suppose it's quite sad really, but then if he remembered more, would anyone believe him anyway? So yeah, I think it's difficult to actually tell whether or not he's telling the truth. I would like to believe that it was true. Again, he was a normal person. There was no reason for him to make up this lie. But yeah, supporters are saying that there were multiple witnesses. So there were 7 witnesses to this. If this had been a murder, they would have needed one person to send this guy down. Do you know what I mean? So polygraph results, they did 2 tests. This one guy refused yes, but that was to do with another case that he had ongoing. Travis's physical symptoms were very strange. The time that he was missing, he thought it was hours. His family had been going through days of hell, like 5 whole days of not knowing where he was. There was no body. There was no sign of any wrongdoing. So where was he? If he'd just disappeared, where had he been for 5 days, and why would he disappear and not tell anyone where it just didn't make any sense. And there's similar patterns to this seen in other abduction cases before and after this. So yeah, he's if he's telling the truth, it's a pretty horrendous thing what he's been through. If it is a hoax, then it's baffled people for years and years. Obviously Roswell was before this, 1947, the Roswell incident, Area 51 and all that jazz. That happened before this. So he could be elaborating on stories that he's heard from before. Some say the men have just made it up. But then that also raises questions. Why would they risk prison? How have they passed polygraph tests? Why stick to the story for over 50 years? And why did not one of them break if this was a lie? So another one was group hallucination or a stress reaction. But then group hallucination, several men hallucinating the same structured craft, is very unlikely that had happened. I very much doubt that they would have had they were interviewed in separate rooms and every single story was exactly the same. So another theory was lightning, drugs, or natural phenomena, which, if this is a natural phenomenon, what natural phenomena is it? Like, why has no one else ever seen this before? Or, not to say that no one else has seen it, but why has it not been more documented that this has happened to other people? There was no traces of drugs in their systems. There was no storms. There was no storms due. And nothing natural explains his disappearance. They'd gone. How long they were gone for, I'm not sure. But they came straight back to where he was, and he wasn't there. So weird. And then another theory, which is an interesting one, is that it's a government experiment. So maybe it was something to do with the government sending the craft and then seeing how, I don't know, the government do weird things, don't they? They do weird shit all the time. So maybe they sent the craft down to kidnap Travis and see how the humans would react to it. I don't know. But yeah, some suggest it wasn't an alien craft, but it was human. But no evidence support it. It was just discussed. I think people are clutching at straws there, to be perfectly honest with you, because these guys have the same story. So I think it's important to remember that these guys were completely normal, and when I say normal, that's not fair. They lived normal lives, should I say? They had no reason other than money to tell this story, but they didn't make any money for years until they were confident enough to speak about it. So I don't know why they would risk making up a story like that, but then I don't know why a lot of humans do what a lot of humans do, to be honest. It's people make really strange decisions all the time. And I think mental health gets brought into that a lot. But that's just a theory. Maybe they were all struggling with something and they needed an escape. I don't know. But Travis is still alive today. He's still giving talks and he still sticks to the exact same story. So even all these years later, this story doesn't change to Travis or his friends. He's never changed his testimony. So he's never changed anything in that. He's never contradicted himself and he's never actually tried to cash in. I imagine he has made money, particularly with Hollywood making movies about it and things like that. But not once has he ever hesitated about what he said that happened to him. Not in 48 years. So he's never said, no, this didn't happen. He never denied it. He's never given any reason for anyone to think he would be lying. Why would you bring that much attention to yourself? And why would you make up such an elaborate story? I don't know. But yeah, he always ends his interviews as well, or a lot of his interviews with, I wish it had never happened. So it's one of those cases that pulls you in, not because of aliens, but because of people. 7 men, 1 beam of light, 5 days of fear, and a lifetime of questions. I've still got loads of questions about this and why this happened and why they made this up and why is something like this not happened since. I've heard a lot of UFO abduction stories where people remember being taken and being experimented on and things like that. But I suppose it's another one of those things, isn't it? If you weren't there, then you've got to take what people are saying as truth until they come out with it as a lie. Was it a hoax, an accident, something beyond our understanding? You just don't know, do you? It's pretty strange. Maybe the truth is out there, or maybe it's buried in the Arizona woods, where one night in 1975, the sky opened up. Thank you for listening to episode 3 of Blood on the Balcony. Next week, we're going to be heading somewhere darker, somewhere colder, into a case where footprints suddenly stop, bodies are found half-dressed, and tongues go missing. Again, if you've got a story, you've got any comments about Travis, any of the other episodes that we've done, let me know. We can discuss them in more detail. If anyone knows Travis, that would be insane. I'd love to say, and here he is with his story. But yeah, I tried ringing, but it didn't ring me back. So yeah, is Travis normal or not? Or I keep saying the word normal. I don't like that word. Nobody's normal. There is no normal. Everyone's different. So this is what makes it even more entertaining, I suppose. But yeah, if you've got any stories, come on, get them sent in. bloodonthebalcony@gmail.com. Hit me up on Instagram. That was really bad. Yeah, just send me a message on Instagram if you've got any stories. I love hearing about people's experiences with paranormal, anything to do with UFO sightings. If you've got pictures of UFOs, get them sent in. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week.